Well, we've come a long way since poli-sci first year tutorials.
Yeah.
Little panoramic shot.
100 or 150?
I don't know. All I know is this first year.
Yeah, it was first year. 2013.
Heather was in that class. Andrew was in that class. You were in that class.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
So we don't have to turn off the microphone, right?
No, we do.
We do.
Have to.
Yeah, turn it on
Yeah.
and off every time you talk.
Because if every time it hits there, it'll transmit it to the live stream.
Okay.
It must be nuts for you having to work full time, and I sort of feel for it.
I'm ready for bed. It's like 3 days in. I'm like, all I want to do is sleep.
Yeah, I just can't wait for the weekend because
Yeah.
there's no students like campus, and I can just sleep in. Like my workouts.
Yeah.
Like I probably do 5 or 6 a week.
Yeah.
And I'm down to like 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I still try to like block 45 minutes off just to like physically get to the gym. What I do there, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, all I want to do is sit on the bike because I have no energy to lift anyways.
Others blowing on my phone. I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't work out today.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of like lifting weights and lifting heavy, so it's like yesterday I walked in and my body walked in and I was like,
I got
no,
nothing.
let's do like a full body circuit and then go home. Like 40 minutes and work. That's all the time I have today. And
Yeah.
but it's important to make time to de-stress or even just to get away from.
Yeah, like at the end, so I'll do my legs and then do the stairs at the top setting for 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And it hurts afterwards, but the endorphins
Oh, is
just
it on?
Oh, yeah.
stress
You want it
release
turned
is
on?
awesome.
Okay.
What was?
The mic.
Oh, was it on?
It's on, yeah.
Oh.
So whatever we're saying.
We're talking about working out.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We're about to get underway with the Fed's executive debate. Before we begin, I'm going to pass the mic, or Aaron Francis, one of the Fed staffers, is going to do a land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Chris. Before we begin, I'll be sharing first of all, the debate rules and helping to moderate today's forum. I wanted to firstly acknowledge that the University of Waterloo and the SLC is situated on the Haldimand Tract, land that was promised to the Six Nations, and we wanted to acknowledge that fact before we began today. Thank you. So, to begin, this is the Fed's Imprint Executive Debate, the official executive debate for 2017. I'll quickly go over the rules, and certainly if there's any questions, now is the time to ask. For the first round, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Following that, each candidate will be posed with a question and will be given 60 seconds to respond to that question, at which point their opposing candidate will be given 45 seconds to rebut that previous statement. And we'll proceed in that fashion, minus the opening statements for rounds 2, 3, and 4. And then in round 5, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And following that, we'll open the forum up to those in the audience. If anyone was curious, the questions today have been formulated by a committee consisting of myself, the Fed's executive, and Matt from Imprint. And we especially want to thank Imprint for their participation and facilitation of this forum as well. All right, so we'll begin. And the first question, or we'll begin with statements. Can you give me a mic test, Antonio? Or anyone? Hello? Okay, so just be sure to pass the mics when you're all done. And Sarah, are you okay with the timer? Are you ready to time? Oh, Matt is? Okay, perfect. And so, Antonio, your 2 minutes for a statement begins now.
Perfect. My name is Antonio Breva, and I am running to be your next president of the Federation of Students. I am currently Fed's Arts Counselor, and I work for the Vice President of Education, Sarah Wiley, as her Government Affairs Commissioner. My other roles include I've been involved in the Student Success Office and with Renaissance English Language Center, where I was a base peer leader. My job was to be a social and academic peer mentor to international students. In addition, I've also been involved with Imprint for 2 years, and I had a stint there as managing editor, and I've been involved with orientation for 3 years as a leader. Now, I'm not only excited at the prospect of serving you, but I'm also incredibly excited to be on the same team with 3 other inspiring student leaders, Jill Knight, Brian Schwan, and Andrew Klubine. The 4 of us bring a unique set of leadership experiences from all areas of campus life, which is why I believe we're the most qualified team in this campaign. We have an ambitious platform that was prepared with one goal, positive-driven message in mind. Furthering Feds as an organization that works for you, represents you, maximizes the value of your student dollars, advocates for you, represents you, and supports you in all areas of campus life and student services that serve you. If I'm lucky to serve as your next president, I plan to reform student engagement through student-driven governance reform. Make Feds part of the solution that works to make UWaterloo a more compassionate, greener, and equitable campus for all. For example, advocating for sexual violence prevention and supports for survivors, and rethink the way in which this institution goes about addressing mental health.
10 seconds.
I want to advocate and emphasize the need for a more proactive wellness strategy instead of being reactive. Thank you.
Time.
Is it time to reset? Okay. And the next opening statement.
First off, thank you very much, Feds and Imprint, for having us here. So I'm Caleb Boscamp. I'm also running for president with Team Reboot Waterloo. So my background is I'm a fourth-year econ student. I have a business background. My startup Joywares, the main profit driver product, I was able to increase the profit of it by about 500% and the sales 700%. And I bought a rental property in second year, so I'm very, very much business oriented, and I want to bring that sense of frugality and best bang for your buck to Feds. So when we set out to look at running for Feds, we got feedback from students and student leaders, and what we heard was that Feds wasn't necessarily representing all students, no matter their political engagement. Feds wasn't as transparent as it could be, and we also, that their fees were unclear as to where they were going and they were too high. So when we were creating our platform, that's really what we wanted to address. For the representing all students, currently the presidents of societies and the presidents of university colleges do not have a seat on council, we heard clear frustration from them because they clearly represent constituents, so we give them a seat on council. For transparency, the Feds in the past has made board meetings from public to private now. So yes, we want to open those back up to the public. We want the budget to be clear and transparent so the average student can understand it, and we want voting in GMs to be available online so that if it's at an inconvenient time for you, you can still participate. And finally, we really, really want to focus on
10 seconds.
Where your fees are going so that it's harder to introduce fees like W-Perks and make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck with your Feds fees, which has increased from $2 million to $3 million in the last 5 years.
Time.
Thank you. And that was the opening statements for the role of president. The next opening statements will come from the candidates for Vice President Operations and Finance.
Is that me giving the feedback? Sorry.
There we are.
There we go.
All right, your 2 minutes begins now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking your time to come out, either watching online or in person. My name is Brian Schwan. I am seeking re-election for the position of Vice President Operations and Finance for this upcoming year as a part of Team Gold. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to continue working for students in a variety of ways and giving back the value to students. A little bit of background on myself. I am a recreation and sport business grad with a minor in human resource management. And throughout my 4 years here as an undergrad on campus, I have been involved in many different areas in the student experience, and I have an immense and intense passion to continue to improve our student community here. And I want to continue doing that as one of your student leaders. In the past year, we have noticed sushi prices have dropped by up to 20%. We've introduced new items such as the hot grab and go and iNews. introduced limited time offers at the Bomber to improve food categories for students, and as well introducing ice cream and poke bowls at Campus Bubble. Really focusing on, the past year has been focusing on the value for students in terms of their food on campus, because it doesn't take a hard look to look around on campus and see that food prices are very high. Paying $13, $15 for a Subway and a sub and a drink at Subway underneath food services is a little bit ridiculous. So I want to continue working for the students and making your voices heard to improve the availability of not only food on campus, but bring forward passion in so many different areas.
Thank you. Are you set with the timer? All right, candidate, begin now.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Feds and Imprint for hosting this forum so you students can learn more about us candidates and why we're running for election. I'm Joshua Boscamp, running for VP of Operations and Finance, and I want to address the problem I've seen. Like many students at the University of Waterloo, there was a time when I didn't care about Feds, and I knew they collected fees for me, but it wasn't relevant. I didn't think, and I couldn't care. And that apathy and, in some cases, disillusionment with Feds has created a problem where Feds, since students may not know or care how Feds is spending their money, Feds is less accountable toward its fiscal policy, and I want to bring a little bit of a historical perspective to that. I was going through the auditor's reports and budget reports as far back as I could get 6 years ago. The fees collected 6 years ago were $1.6 million, and the fees collected budgeted for this year were just over $3 million. So that's a 50%, sorry, that's doubled in 6 years. And the way that money has been spent has been, in many cases, irresponsible. And when students say they don't know what Feds does, Feds has responded not tactfully at times. For example, the Feds marketing campaign, hashtag Feds does that. That was a passive-aggressive campaign blaming students for not knowing what Feds does instead of trying to listen to their opinions and bring them into the conversation. The way Feds has spent money has, take for example the mapped-in kiosk here in the SLC. Yes, the SLC can be difficult to navigate at times, but do we really need glorified iPads running
10 seconds.
a free mapped-in app for $45,000? I want to bring fiscal responsibility to Feds and ensure that the money is being spent wisely. And
Time.
Thank you, candidate. And so those were the opening statements for VP Operation Finance. We're moving now to VP Internal, and before I let the candidates on stage speak, I do have an opening statement from Andrew Zettel. Andrew couldn't be here today. He's in Ottawa on co-op, and he's just asked me to read his opening statement. I'll be subject to the same time length, so I'll begin now. Hello, and thank you to Feds and Imprint for hosting this debate. I regret that I can't be with you in person, but I am lucky to be on a co-op term in Ottawa with Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada right now. I am glad I'm running with an excellent team that is making an effort to connect with many students on campus, while I try my best to connect with students online or by phone. There is a very simple reason that I'm running to be VP Internal. I am a very enthusiastic person who brings energy and creativity to the role that I take on. I love our school, and I am eager to be involved in a way that can celebrate all that makes us one of Canada's leading universities. I have been lucky to have incredible opportunities over the last 4 years, from serving as president of the St. Jerome Students' Union to working a co-op term with UW Food Services marketing team. I have been involved with Orientation Week. I have sat on the Fed Student Council. All of these experiences have given me great pride in our school community. As VP Internal, I want to bring people together and help us show our school pride. I will be the first to admit I don't have all the answers. However, I will need to work together. I will need to work together with dedicated and knowledgeable people on a variety of projects. On School Spirit, for instance, we need to support the work of Warrior Tribe, who are incredible leaders when it comes to School Spirit. My new proposed School Spirit Advisory Committee will tackle some of the high-level questions around the format and structure for Orientation Week, Reunion Weekend, and other major events. The goal will be to allow students to become involved in the representation of our great school. On mental health, I want there to be a concerted effort to support health services and MATES by organizing a comprehensive mental health awareness week each term to rigorously highlight all the services available to those suffering with mental illness. We should never let people struggling with mental illness suffer alone. When it comes to issues facing our Indigenous brothers and sisters, I have become deeply convinced that Canada has so much work to do, and it begins with my acknowledgement of the historical wrongs perpetrated against First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I really wish I had come to this realization sooner in my life.
Time.
Just to be clear, to clarify for anyone, that's the opening statement for Andrew Zettel, Team Reboot. Was there a question?
Since he's not getting a closing statement, can we have the rest of his opening statement read in the time for his closing statement?
If the candidates are, yeah, sure. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Bear with me, I'll finish the opening statement. At closing? Okay, at closing. All right, so we'll continue on in the category opening statements, VP Internal. You have a microphone? Your 2 minutes begins now.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for this opportunity to come and speak to you and inform you about the Feds election that's happening. So my name is Jill Knight, and I'm running for the Vice President of Internal. So I want to speak a bit to my experience that I've had. So currently I'm in my 5th term of Dawning on main campus. So I'm in Ronite Village. I have been a student leadership program team lead for the past year now. So speaking to my experience in the Student Success Office. I've been involved in orientation on the level of a frontline leader to a coordinator and as a FOC. I've also worked with the staff in orientation as an orientation assistant this past summer. I've also been very involved in my Faculty of Applied Health Science as I am a 4th year recreation and leisure student. So I have been on our student society called Awesome for 6 terms, serving as Director of Services and Events, a Vice President, and the current President. So as you can see, these points have really increased my involvement on campus, which has also continued to see that I have a love for student affairs, which is one of the reasons why I'd love to be your VP Internal. So speaking to a few points on my platform, I would love to continue to improve the relationships with Feds and the student societies, whether they're on main campus or with our satellite campuses. Encouraged to continue working with our affiliated institutions, so the colleges, and working with them to get their opinion and advocate for them, as well as satellite campuses. I'm also interested in bringing more awareness to the student-run services, so bringing to visibility. So working with the partnerships that I've already created in housing and athletics and the Student Success Office, and empowering and advocating for them. That will go hand in hand with the clubs and societies as well, so bringing more space for the clubs as well as strengthening the partnership around, so ensuring that we really get a good student experience and incorporate them. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Candidate, your time begins now.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Wang, and I'm running independently for VP Internal. So a little background about myself. I'm a 4th year computer science student with a psych minor. I've been involved in various student organizations, so I've been involved in St. Jerome's as a student activities team member, and I've been involved in Feds as a math counselor, been on the internal admin committee. I've also been a math FOC and worked as a leader for orientation. Lastly, I'm very heavily involved in my faculty of math as currently I'm a math SOC president, but I've been involved as a VP events, so it's similar to VP internal for Feds. Been involved as a math endowment fund director. So a little bit about my platform. I would like to create a more welcoming and inclusive atmosphere at all events and club spaces, or any space in general. Promoting healthy student involvement and enrichment, so caring about student leaders' wellness. Increasing visibility for societies, of colleges, clubs, and services by encouraging all parties to share information, because we can help each other out. And lastly, assist with all student leaders by providing them contacts within Feds and university staffs, so fostering that relationship between faculty, staff, and students. And that's about it.
Thank you. So those were the opening statements for Vice President Internal. Before we move into this last category, I just want to remind everyone in the audience that following these last statements, we'll be jumping right into question and debate period. So for now, the following category is Vice President Education. Are you all set? Yeah. Go ahead, grab another mic. Testing. Yeah?
Yeah, this is good. Okay,
All right.
awesome.
For Vice President Education, nominee, your time begins now.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Heather Bone. I'm running for VP Ed on Team Reboot Waterloo. For those who don't know me, my experience is largely in advocacy. In the past, I've worked at Queen's Park as a staffer for an MPP, in which I learned a lot about pragmatic advocacy and what that looks like. And with a provincial election coming up in 2018, I really do believe that that will be an area of huge focus for feds and something that I think my experience lends myself to very nicely. I have a lot of what I believe to be pragmatic policy solutions that I think will work well, and they represent students on the issues that matter most to them, being tuition, the affordability of housing, and issues such as that. So the first thing that I think that we should lobby for is for the Ontario Electricity Support Program to be applied to students. Currently, the Government of Ontario has this a program where low-income people can receive a credit for part of their electricity bills, but for many students this is imputed into the cost of their rent. So this is increasing the cost of living enormously, and students aren't receiving financial aid to help with that. And so I believe with this being a major topic in the next provincial election, we can make this a really big win for students. The other thing that I think is really important is I would lobby the provincial governments to introduce a co-op student tax credit. As you may or may not know, previous Feds executive basically lobbied for the governments to bring in the new OSAP, which will slash the education and tuition tax credits. While this might be a good policy on a provincial basis, I don't think this is good for Waterloo as a whole, and I'd be glad to talk about that later on. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. And for the final statement for Vice President Education, candidate, your time begins now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrew Klubine. I'm in 4B Knowledge Integration, and I'm running for Vice President Education. A little bit about me. I've been working in the portfolio since first year for 2.5 years. I was Municipal Affairs Commissioner, where I negotiated the most recent UPass and helped keep the 7D on Ring Road, at least until the LRT gets in. I also sit on Senate and the Board of Governors, where I've advocated for better campus design and improved health services. I've also represented UW students at the provincial level through the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance 6 times at their conferences and once at Queen's Park, where I indeed did lobby for that tax credit that was just mentioned to be removed and rolled into reformed OSAP, so happy to talk about that later on. I'm excited to be running as a part of Team Gold, and I'll highlight a couple points of our platform. First of all, the co-op fee, which is going up to over $700 as of next term, needs a deep dive. We need to look into where that fee goes and where efficiencies can be had to make sure students are getting the best bang for their buck. And I'm also passionate about starting a new housing and academic advising service for students so they have access to know what their rights are when they're in trouble. And finally, improved research and outreach so that feds can actually be in touch on the ground with the issues that matter to students so that you can tell us what you want us to be advocating for at the provincial, local, federal, and on-campus levels. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. All right, so we'll move immediately into questions. First question will come from Chris Lolis.
So we're going to move into the first round of questions, so we'll be asking questions for all of the candidates. I'll remind the candidates and the audience of how this format works. So we will ask a question to an individual person. They will have 60 seconds to respond, and then the person running for that same position will have 45 seconds to rebut that statement. Throughout this debate, we have 2 types of questions. A general question, which is going to be the same question posed to both candidates, and then specific questions which are mostly targeting things in your platform or your experience. So we'll start with the president. You have a question, Brian?
Just a quick clarification question. For the 45-second rebuttal, is that for one response in total, or can that be broken up to be debated back and forth? For example, I speak for 10 seconds.
No, you have 45 seconds to rebut the other person's statement.
Okay, thank you.
So the first question is a general question for the president. So I'll first ask this question to Antonio. He will have 60 seconds to respond. Then Caleb will have 45 seconds to rebut that statement. And then Caleb will have 60 seconds to provide his own answer. And then Antonio will have 45 seconds to rebut his statement. Is everyone clear on the format? Wonderful. So this first question, I'll also remind that these questions were comprised, as Aaron said, from the current Feds executive, the Fed services, as well as Imprint. So you might be able to guess who provided some of these questions. So this first question is for Antonio. With the recent initiatives that have been put in place by the university and he for she, like the new revisions to the Sexual Assault Policy 42 and the Salary Anomaly Review, women's issues have begun to gain traction at the university. What specific actions are you, as potential Feds leaders, going to take to continue to acknowledge and advocate for vulnerabilities that women-identifying individuals and people with uteruses face on campus? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you for that question. There's multiple points in my platform that address that issue. One of them is preventing sexual violence and supporting survivors at an institutional level. This upcoming year, the sexual violence coordinator is going to be hired as a result of the implementation of Policy 42. And I want to make sure that FEDS connects with the sexual violence coordinator to make sure that as FEDS, as an organization, through our student-run services, we become a leader in prevention measures. I also want to work with Brian Schwan, our BPOF, and make sure that sexual violence survivors have the medical care that they need. I also want to advocate this at a provincial level, working with our Vice President of Education and making sure that they have the medical care they need in OHIP. And then when it comes to
10 seconds.
When it comes to he for she, I want to make sure that we're investing in local solutions and identifying barriers that are
Time. Caleb, you have 45 seconds to rebut, starting now.
I want to thank all the groups on university that have worked towards addressing gender disparity, and the he for she, the Glow Center, the Women's Center, and for really addressing that issue. I want to thank Antonio for his work at USA, and we'll actually both be at USA this coming spring and looking at the policy that we're advocating the province for. So yes, when going through the budget with Josh, the groups on campus that Feds help support are, for the amount of funding they're getting, are doing amazing work, and we want to continue that, and we want to work alongside them so they can do even better work in the future.
All right, you now have 60 seconds to answer the question for yourself. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. With the recent initiatives that have been put in place by the university and he for she, like the new revisions to the Sexual Assault Policy 42 and the Salary Anomaly Review, women's issues have begun to gain traction at the university. What specific actions are you, as potential Feds leaders, going to take to continue to acknowledge and advocate for vulnerabilities that women-identifying individuals and people with uteruses face on campus? Caleb, you have 60 seconds.
In my entrepreneurship classes, one thing I really noticed was vast disparity in the genders. There would be 30 people in the class and there would be 3 females. And going forward into the future, the glass ceiling is starting there before that. And with the before that, we really want to work with the province to make sure that women are getting that funding to get into STEM. That's what Waterloo's a lot about. And we want to make sure that that high school is preparing them for that, and that Waterloo is also receptive for that. So there are those female entrepreneurs, there are those females in STEM engineering that can go forward and really drive the economy of Canada. And yes, we want to work with the Feds groups, and we also want to lobby the government of Ontario to make sure that keeps happening. And I'm looking forward to also working with Antonio at USA to make sure that happens.
Antonio, you have 45 seconds to rebut.
Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to this issue, Policy 42 is going to go a review this upcoming year, and I want to make sure that if I'm lucky to be Fed's president, we have the opportunity to shape the direction of that review. As I was mentioning before, I want to advocate for sexual violence preventions across the sector. So this is going to be done both at an institutional level and at a provincial level.
10 seconds.
I just want to make sure that we're not talking about it, just talking about it. I want us to have concrete actions, and I think that's what my platform offers.
Okay, thank you both. I will remind all of the candidates, please speak directly into the mic and have it close to your mouth so that not only people in this room can hear you, but people listening in on the live stream as well.
Thank you. So I'll just stand if you don't mind. This next question is directed to the candidates for VP Operations and Finance. Both of you will have 60 seconds to respond to this question. Brian, you'll be first. Bear with me. You have your mic with you? All right, here we go. Here's the question. Sustainable Campus Initiative conducted a highly successful used clothing sale in the fall term with positive feedback from students and will continue to have sales, including one coming up in March. However, there has been an open space in the old Apple II area in the SLC basement for over a year now, to which SCI submitted a proposal to convert this space into a used clothing store to provide affordable clothing for students and reduce potential landfill waste. If elected, will you commit to supporting a space being converted to a student-run used clothing store within the next year? You have 60 seconds. Go.
Thank you for the question. I thank you for Cy for submitting that question. In terms of our commercial service, it does get a little bit difficult to commit to ensuring that a used clothing store goes in that Apple II space for a couple of reasons. Firstly, from a business proposal section, we need to ensure that that revenue model is going to be a break-even revenue model and it won't be a lost commercial service because then that's going to be a bigger deficit on feds as an organization. Additionally, I think I would be willing to work with Cy to improve their business plan so that we can have a better evaluation of the success of what they're proposing. As well as we need to survey the students and ensure what services going in that space is actually going to benefit the greater student body. And so consultation needs to be done.
Thank you. Josh, you'll have 45 seconds to rebut that statement.
Given that SCI has already conducted a survey and apparently gotten great feedback, and that the space is currently unused, it may seem unnecessary to a lot of us students to conduct another survey to see if that's the best use of space. Perhaps there is a better use of space, but if it's not currently being used and the business plan does offer break-even revenue model, I see no reason why there would be another survey needed to see if that's the best use of that space, though, if it's not currently being used.
10 seconds.
I'm done.
Thank you. And then you'll have another minute now to respond to the question itself. I'll repeat the last part. Josh, if elected, will you commit to supporting a space being converted to a student-run used clothing store within the next year?
I have to start off by saying, from the information I have, I'm not able to make a commitment, yes or no, one way or the other. Similar to what Brian has said, I would have to see a break-even revenue model. Given that the space isn't currently used and this is a proposition for the space to be used, I would be very willing to work with them to, if for whatever reason that might not be a currently break-even revenue model, to figure out a way we could make that work for students. Because the SLC, if this space is not being used, the depreciation on these assets is something that the students are effectively losing money by having this space sitting
10
unused.
seconds.
So I cannot commit to saying yes, but given a break-even revenue model, I would work with them to use that space wisely, yes.
Time.
Thank you. All right.
You're going to go.
And pass the mic. Oh, sorry, Brian. Are you prepared? Ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Perfect. I just want to clarify that the space is actually being currently used. It's used as a bookable room by students and for them to rent out for group projects or silent study or whatever their needs are. So it is being used. It's not sat empty. Additionally, I don't have many details off the top of my head of what the survey was that was conducted. However, I think it's important to evaluate and compare to different student unions what commercial services they have within their buildings to ensure that we are exploring all of the options possible for that space so that students get the best value out of the space within the
10
SLC,
seconds.
out of the footprint.
Time.
Thank you. So the next category of questions will be directed to the candidates for Vice President Internal.
Okay, so same format as before. I'll ask the question to Jill first. You'll have a minute to respond. Then Jaswell will have 45 seconds to rebut what Jill said, and then Jaswell will have 1 minute to respond and 45 seconds for Jill to rebut. Okay. Since November, there have been 4 student deaths by suicide at the University of Guelph and 1 on campus at UWP. Counseling services is serving students at maximum capacity, and the current demand is leading to wait times to nearly 4 to 6 weeks. MATES is a relatively new Fed service, and many students do not know of its existence. What are you going to do to increase MATES visibility to students on campus, and what else besides MATES will you be doing to address mental health issues on campus?
Wonderful. Thank you for the question. To start off, I think it's important to go to MATES and address MATES and see what their fundamental platform is, because they're the most invested in this, because they're in the program for a reason. So I think going to MATES and addressing them, consultating with them, and seeing how we can best advocate for them and empower them to reach greater visibility would be my first step. So seeing as we are campaigning right now, we are setting up meetings in order to see that success through. As well, I think it's important that leaders who address first-year students are sharing the education and the knowledge that they have. So as experience as a Dawn or an orientation leader, I think it starts from first year and work up. So I think if we start disseminating the information that we already have and instructing our leaders who are on the ground facing students and just being open
10
and
seconds.
approachable, I think that will really help counseling services out.
I completely agree with Jill, but I would like to add that in addition to reaching out to UW Mates is also raising its visibility to all societies and all student-run services or clubs so that they know there's a resource out there for them and not be unaware that UW Mates exist and not just counseling services exist if they feel like a student is more comfortable to speak with, or if the wait time for counseling services is long.
Okay, Jaswell, now you have a minute to answer the question.
Wait, can you repeat?
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah.
Sure. Since November, there have been 4 student deaths by suicide at the University of Guelph and 1 on campus at UWP. Counseling services is serving students at maximum capacity, and the current demand is leading to wait times to nearly 4 to 6 weeks. MATES is a relatively new Fed service, and many students don't know of its existence. What are you going to do to increase MATES visibility to students on campus, and what else besides MATES will you be doing to address mental health issues on campus?
Okay, so in addition to UW Mates, there are other clubs that can also do something that help relieve stress. And so, for example, there is meditation. There's a club for meditation, and there's also we have to also reach out to athletics and recreation to see if like the de-stressor for art or de-stressor for yoga or de-stressor with like art therapy would also be useful for societies, clubs, and students. We also want to foster a relationship with the staff and faculty that is also potentially causing the stress, because it is you are a student first. So if the faculty doesn't understand that, that is also an issue.
Again, I'd like to agree with Jezebel, and I think it's important that we do look at the training that the faculty, staff, and students are receiving on this campus and do a critical evaluation of the training that they are receiving. So it's important that people, if the waits are long, that at least we can get them immediate help, and learning that staff, faculty, and our students have to play a role in this and helping address that. So that will help alleviate the counseling services lines and the MATES lines, and making sure that we have proper training in place in order to help these students that need it.
Okay, so next question is another general question for the VP Education candidates. So same format, same question for both of you. I'll ask Heather first. Heather will have 60 seconds. Andrew will have 45. Then Andrew will have 60. Heather will have 45. Okay, so the question is, a large amount of the VP Education's time is focused on academic advocacy. What are the issues on-campus academics that you want to address?
Well, that's a really good question. Of utmost importance to me, I think, is the co-op fee. I know that Andrew's mentioned it, and we'll see eye to eye on a lot of that. I actually, last year, I submitted a Freedom of Information request to the university to get a breakdown of the co-op fee. I found that over the past 5 years, after adjusting for inflation and after adjusting for the number of attendees, the expenditures on staff have increased over 18%. I simply find that unacceptable. We need to seriously question, okay, are students getting 18% better service over the past 5 years out of SECA? And so I really think looking at that, especially since the co-op fee is going to be going up, I think is a really big area of priority, and I'm really prepared to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with Heather. I started with a concern about the co-op fee. I would question the approach of seeming like we're opposing the university on this. I mean, 18% increase in salary includes new hires. It also includes the fact that we've been growing as a campus the last several years. So in principle, absolutely, we need to be asking questions about where that fee goes. But I think it's something we need to do in collaboration with the institution.
Okay, thank you. So Andrew, you now have 60 seconds to answer the question. Do you want me to read it again?
Yes.
Okay, so a large amount of the VP Education's time is focused on academic advocacy. What are the issues of on-campus academics that you want to address?
So we've touched on the co-op fee already. Basically what I'm proposing is something I've already begun a conversation with the executive director of CECA, is to do a one-year deep dive into the fee with a committee of students who will assess where that money is going. In addition to that, we've seen the rollout of Waterloo Works that has been perhaps rocky, and Co-op 2.0 is on the way. So those are things that I want to be on the ground with students who are on the ground, asking how are those things going and making sure that CCA is rolling out those programs to best serve students. In addition to that, Sarah's been doing some advocacy over the year about course syllabi repository that I think is a fantastic idea, and I'd want to keep working on to allow students access to know what kind of courses they'd be signing up for to help make more informed decisions about course enrollment. And finally, course evaluations is something that's been a conversation for several years that I'd want to keep going with.
Time.
45 seconds. Okay, great. I just want to clarify that that 18% number actually does include the growth of the program. So I really do think we need to start asking for those questions. But yeah, I obviously want to work with the university. There are also some policies in co-op that I think are harmful to students. For example, not being able to sign off of an interview, I don't think is useful for employers either. And I'd like to work with the university to kind of work on a co-op approach that puts students first and is also good for employers. And
10 seconds.
I really think that is possible because it benefits the university and it benefits students, and I want to make sure to get as many wins on that as possible.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll now go back to the presidents, and we'll begin round 2 of questions. So in this round, the questions are more targeted towards your platforms or your experience. So I'll start with Caleb and ask you a question, and then Antonio will have 45 seconds to rebut. Again, you have 60 seconds to respond to your question. So Caleb, in your platform you state any third-party fee will have to provide a service specifically to students. By this, do you mean only UW students, and if so, do you believe UW undergrads have a role to play in the larger regional community? You have 60 seconds. You may begin.
Well, firstly, I believe we come to Waterloo to get an education and to get a degree. So if you want to engage with the larger community, there's clubs, there's the Rotary, there's lots of ways for you to get engaged and involved, and I would encourage you to do that. However, for ancillary fees, third-party fees, such as a WPER fee, I would really, what we want to occur is that those fees are primarily providing a service to further students' ability to pursue their education here at Waterloo. That's really the gist and the force of it. And yes, if I were to be elected, we would. That is the criteria which we'd look at fees at. Does it help students get their degrees and help them with further their education?
Antonio, you have 45 seconds to rebut.
Yeah, I agree we should protect students from predatory third-party fees. I think all of us on this stage are in agreement with that. I think before the introduction of any fee, I think there should be proper student consultation and see what type of value that fee can bring to the overall student experience, not just the education experience, but also campus life and the overall student experience. So yeah, of course, I would never want to introduce a predatory third-party fee and protect students from any sort of fee.
Okay, Antonio, we now have a question for you. What does campus equity mean to you, and specifically, how will you dismantle core barriers to equity on the campus environment? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you for the question. One of my platform points is about sexual violence, but also I talk about a Fed's audit in my platform. And the Fed's audit is really to make sure that we're addressing all the needs of students, especially those students that tend to be marginalized. I want to work with the equity office to make sure that we address any gaps we identify in such an audit. I want to be clear of what the audit is. The audit is to make sure that we are filling all the gaps of services when it comes to equity. I want to make sure we're doing it in an intersectional way. And that's really what it means. And I think the audit will inform what sort of actions we're going to take after.
Caleb, you have 45 seconds to rebut. You may begin.
So I guess the way I would look at it, there's two intertwining parts to my answer to that, I guess. We have the Women's Center, we have GLOW, and what we would look to do is really and we have the university side of it, which is the Center for Equality, and really make sure that both of those are on the same page, that they're working towards the same goal, that there's that collaboration. And so there should be two outcomes of that. It should be more effective for students. We can further our goals better, and there should be in that overlapping of goals. There should be efficiencies too. So you students are getting better value for your money, and
10 seconds.
They're getting better bang for their buck in pursuing that equality and pursuing that people are no longer marginalized.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Next set of questions are directed to the candidates for VP Operations Finance. Same rules, 60-second answers, 45-second rebuts. This one, first we'll start with Josh, if you have a mic nearby. Josh, your platform has focused on cutting the Fed's fee by up to $12.50 a year. This would be arguably a large cut to the budget. How do you plan to maintain the services and advocacy that Feds delivers with less money?
So I will say the services that are quite visible to students, such as the GLOW Center, the Women's Center, the commercial services, the Bomber even, they aren't the main cost areas. What we'd be looking to reduce is the spending in marketing, IT, services salaries. Services salaries have increased from $327,000 in 2010-2011 to just over $1,038,000 this past year. That's 21% compounded yearly. That's untenable growth in services salaries, and we've seen similar growth in IT spending and marketing spending. And what we want to do is say, yes, those departments are important, but are we getting 300% more value from those departments than we were 6 years ago? I'm not convinced, and that's where the majority of those fee cuts would come from. The fee cuts would not come from the visible services to students. Those aren't the major areas of spending. It's background administration stuff that needs to
Time.
Thank you. Brian, you have 45 seconds to rebut. Go.
Thanks. So I first want to focus on the fact of service salaries. There has been fee increases with proposed outcomes at general meetings that students have voted on to increase the services and also the support to student clubs, societies, and services that the Federation of Students offers. Policy 18 with university is a thing, and it's very difficult to let go of a university employee or a Federation of Students employee for cause of just saying we don't want your duties anymore, as well as those duties actually have to disappear. They can't just be transferred to another individual.
10 seconds.
On top of that, I'm curious to know where in IT and marketing you're going to cut from without actually affecting students and support to clubs, societies, and services.
Time.
Thank you. So Brian, this question is directed to you, and then Josh will have an opportunity to rebut. Brian, one of your platform points includes getting student feedback in the creation of a legal service. Can you describe what the service might look like? How much would it cost students, and how will students have their voices heard in the consultation process? Go.
So the student legal insurance has been brought to council this past year, and there was a presentation done by Student Care, the same company who offers the health and dental plan, as a new service that they provide. And through brief discussion with Student Council, they asked to have more consultation with the student body before any further action happens. That's going to be done through a survey that asks specific questions regarding how much students are willing to pay for, what type of things that they wish that they could pursue for legal insurance and legal advice down the road. In addition, it will, if the fee is implemented, it will only be based off of student consultation through this survey and as well through a referendum to the greater student body. I personally have zero interest in either pro or con the survey. It is completely up to the students,
10
and
seconds.
I'm leaving it in the hands of students to decide what they would like to do with this.
Thank you, Josh. You have 45 seconds to comment. Go ahead.
I have to say thank you for being very clear that you are not interested in you are not biased toward the outcome of this student survey, and the implementation or lack thereof of this legal insurance fee will be directly related to the student feedback received. I think it's very important that we get student feedback from a representative percentage of the student population. It's very easy to sample a student demographic
10 seconds.
that may be biased against what the majority population of the student body would see as valuable.
Time.
Okay, so this next question is for Jill. Same rules, like 60 seconds, then 45 seconds rebut. So Jill, from your platform, what does bring services to satellite campuses mean? Which services are you referring to, and how do you anticipate that this will be happening in a new, different way?
Excellent. So I think bringing services to satellite campus would be first to bring and educate the satellite campuses on the services that we have here to make sure that is relevant to the services that they need on the satellite campus. So that is, again, up to student consultation to determine if the services we have on our main campus here is what is relevant and what is needed on the satellite campuses. So bringing the services to them would be to inform them and let them know what we do offer our students here on main campus, and seeing if that is something that is of value to them there, or it's generating conversation and engaging with them to see what student services that they need, because they are a different set of students in GDBA or in pharmacy. So it's just making sure that we know what they want, but letting them also know what we provide to our students here on our main campus. And then you get to rebut that. Like you get to do my question.
So I agree with what Jill said. There's a lot we can do to work together, because the resources we need, they may be able to provide. So like GBDA can help with digital media, and everything can help each other out. And I want to be able to facilitate the working back and forth, telling what feds can offer from here and what they can offer back, because it can help them with their portfolio, etc. So yeah.
Okay. So Jasbel, in your platform, you discussed making CRT a 24-hour service. Why is this important to UW undergrads?
So I spoke to a current CRT volunteer, and he said that this is something CRT would want to do, because health service is not open 24/7, and so the reach that EMS can have, there's a delay when the CRT is just on the third floor, so they can reach. And there was an instance just on last Friday that someone in SJ hurt themselves, and I just ran here, and it was easier than it is to call someone because there is a delay, and this will help all students.
Do you want me to just start? Okay, great. So, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So I do agree that CRT is a very important student-run service that we have here on campus, but I'm not sure about the necessity of having them 24/7. We do have a very proactive campus police that are on call and always readily available to help students as well. If this is for instance, if it was in St. Jerome's, there's equipped dons that are there to go through a week-long training, 2 weeks long training in order to be able to assess the situation that has happened. But I do agree that if it is addressed as a need that the campus wants, then I think that a few more details need to be ironed out.
10 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is for Andrew. So Andrew, in your platform you mentioned course evaluations. This has been a controversial issue among university faculty and administration. FEDS has worked on this for multiple years. What do you plan to do differently to achieve this goal?
So this has been going on for about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. There's been a committee struck to consider how course evaluations are done on campus. Some recommendations have started to be implemented. You may have noticed more evaluations going online, and others have not. There's a lot of holdup from different faculty members and other stakeholders that can't agree on how this is going to happen. And frankly, I'm not convinced that this is an issue that's going to be resolved quickly. I think that the angle of attack is continue to be present, continue to be a part of the conversations, and don't settle for excuses like, course evaluations are not 100% accurate, therefore we should not do course evaluations. As far as specifics, like I said, it's continuing to be present in those conversations, continuing to provide research that shows course evaluations are valuable, and continue to provide a student voice that says students want access to course evaluations.
Yeah, well, I would agree with Andrew on pretty much all of what he just said. I do think that we need to work with the university to kind of create this balance of like, I understand their concerns of putting way too much weight on course evaluations, but I do think they are valuable in terms of the student feedback that they provide. And so I would like to make them more significant, because I think a lot of the times, yeah, students aren't necessarily being listened to. And I think if we did work towards those goals,
10 seconds.
then people might treat course evaluations more seriously and put more effort into providing valuable feedback as well.
Okay, this question is for Heather. Heather, other members of your team have campaigned on a decrease to the FEDS fee. Recently, they have publicly stated that funding to part-time VP education staff would be cut by 60%. How do you plan to advocate effectively for students with that reduced resource?
So I think, again, trying to find efficiencies is a good way. So I love the idea of using work studies when possible, because FEDS does pay a lot less money for those students. So I would consider consolidating the roles of the executive assistant in the VP Ed portfolio and the events planner into one work study position, and I believe that that would bring significant cost savings for students, as well as creating a long-term advocacy plan so that we can focus on the issues that matter most to students and make sure that the VP Ed is staying on that priorities, and so that I'm advocating on the issues that are most relevant to student life.
Can you ask what? Yeah. Can you repeat what the question?
So the question that I asked Heather was, other members of your team have campaigned on a decrease to the FEDS fee. Recently, they have publicly stated that funding for part-time VP education staff would be cut by 60%. How do you plan to advocate effectively for students with reduced resources?
Yeah, I think that cuts to the advocacy portfolio are very unwise. Having been in it for 4 years now, it is a very lean portfolio to begin with, and the job of Vice President of Education is so broad, advocating to 3 levels of government and the institution and whatever else happens to come across their table to reduce the little resources that are already there is just a recipe for disaster as far as actually being able to accomplish anything in the advocacy portfolio for students, which the plan for that portfolio is already underway and will probably be done by the time either of us
10
take
seconds.
office, so I'm not sure that's an issue to address.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we'll now move to the third round of questions, back to the president candidates. We will start with Caleb. And again, 60 seconds to answer, 45-second rebuts. Caleb, your team has called for no more pet projects. Could you please clarify what a pet project means to you and how your team's platform points, such as artwork in the SLC, don't constitute as pet projects?
So the no more useless fees and the no more pet projects really intertwined. So for instance, on the Fed's website, there's a web page for special projects. The first example given is that of LipDub. They requested $16,000 in funding, and then information dies out as to exactly what happened. There's varying reports of $1,200 to $8,000 in funding, which is debated, so I can't give an exact number. They got 2,000 volunteers, is my understanding, to do it, and then the music video was never released. The kiosks for a free app that we spent 45 grand on, that would be a good example of a pet project. So, but I consider these symptoms of greater issues within Feds of foolish spending that students don't need. So
10 seconds.
Yes, the artwork in the SLC, that would be very, very much dependent on can we do it in a cost-effective manner.
Time. Antonio, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not sure either what pet projects means. I just think people use it in general as buzzwords. I just think our team offers a solution to spending and Feds fees. We want to tie in Feds fee and any spending to the long-range plan. I want to make sure we protect students against any unnecessary fee increases or spending on any projects that go against the long-range plan and the strategies outlined there and the metrics outlined there. So that's the solution we're proposing. So yeah, that's what I have to say to that.
Thank you. Antonio, your question is this. Your platform includes improving counseling services intake and reducing wait times. This is an issue that is brought up in nearly every election. What specifically will you do differently to reduce counseling wait times?
That's a good question. And I would have to actually, I want to work with the committee, the student, I forget what the name of the committee is, but the committee that I would sit on that deals with mental health and make sure that, I understand that this year they increased the number of walk-in hours. So I want to see what other resources are available before I commit to specifics. But my platform really focuses on shifting sort of this from being reactive to mental health to proactive. And I know the university has highlighted that as a priority. So I'm happy to work with the director of campus wellness in order to address a proactive wellness strategy.
Caleb, you have 45 seconds.
Yes, mental health is a large issue, and it's a issue larger than Feds alone can solve. And as such, we need to work both with the university and the larger community of Waterloo to see what resources can work in collaboration with the resources we already have to make sure we can effectively address that issue. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question for the VP Operation Finance candidates. This question is directed to Brian. Brian, looking back at the last year, what would you do differently if elected again? You have 60 seconds. Go.
Thank you. Most importantly, I think looking at my platform as well as the budgeting process, I think there needs to be more student consultation done within the budgeting process, connecting with societies more, connecting with more valuable input from students, as well as coming in with continuing to have an open mind. I think I did very, very successfully, and continue to do that with receiving student feedback and making the students' ideas come into fruition.
Thank you. Josh, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. I asked Brian that Brian's been in this position for 1 year. What would he do differently if elected again?
I appreciate the sentiment that student consultation is important before funds are spent. That said, there's also been a concern where clubs and societies are unable to act as quickly as they might wish because they are linked to using Fed's bank accounts, and to my knowledge, the funds they use must be from a check signed by one of the executives. So while I agree student consultation, or more importantly, student feedback is important in the way funds are spent, at the same time,
10 seconds.
The VP Operations and Finance needs to have a vision for how funds can be effectively used and to take initiative himself with
Time.
the context of student feedback.
Time.
Thank you, Josh. All right. So this question is directed to you, Josh, and then Brian, you'll have a chance to rebut. Josh, as VP Operations Finance, you'll be presiding over budgets. Your team platform describes very specific cuts to various Feds departments. How did you settle on these specific numbers, and what specifically would you cut out of departments such as IT, services, and marketing? Thank you.
To a large degree, that information is unfortunately confidential, and that's part of our increased transparency goal. We want to ensure that students know how the funds are being used. How these numbers were arrived at, from the publicly available information, I was looking at auditors' reports and budgets from past years. I can see that there, especially with the policies UWHR has for reducing staff positions, it will be very difficult, and I have to admit I don't know all the answers, but saying this is impossible and it can't be done, sure, okay, the money's getting spent, and if we
10
don't
seconds.
do something to stop it, the fee must increase, that money must be cut off, or we're just going to keep paying more.
Thank you. Brian, you have 45 seconds to respond. Go ahead.
I think the biggest issue with the areas where you've outlined where you're going to cut the money is that you didn't actively seek feedback from these departments or current executives to say, hey, what kind of impact would this have on the student body or these clubs, services, or societies if we were to cut these fees? It seems as though you just came to a number that made sense through looking at the financial documents and not the impact that it will have on the student body and the services that they receive, which I think is detrimental to the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, because if we end up cutting budgets and reducing the amount that
10 seconds.
Feds has to support students, we're then inherently going backwards on our mission statement towards students, and that's not something that Feds should be doing.
Okay, the next question will be for Jasbel. So Jasbel, your platform mentions bringing services and clubs to satellite campuses. Arguably, the issue that satellite campus students face is not a lack of knowledge of the services and clubs that you suggest, but rather a lack of accessibility. What do you plan to do to give them greater access?
I know that their shuttles exist for certain times, but if some of these could just happen in the future, like the ION, the LRT, but like currently there could be ways to make it easier to commute back and forth, whether through carpooling or shuttles, that may make it easier. I know public transport is kind of hard and difficult to get to places, but something like that.
Deanna, would you mind repeating the question again?
Oh, okay. So Jasbel's platform mentions bringing services and clubs to satellite campuses. Arguably, the issues that satellite campus students face is not a lack of knowledge of service and clubs, but a lack of accessibility. So I asked what she planned to do to give them greater access.
Great, and okay, so I do agree with Jasbel, and like the idea of transportation is a bit of a barrier. So I think it's working with the satellite campuses to what she was stating and seeing what services that they want and need in order to bring to them, because you need to address them first in order to see if that's what they want. But yeah.
Okay, and the next question's for Jill. So Jill, your platform suggests the creation of an advocacy committee for services. Why do you think that this is the right avenue to support advocacy within the services?
Awesome. So I think that bringing in advocacy to the services will start encouraging them to feel very empowered and be able to speak their opinions and getting them into the right committees and meetings that they need. So creating this advocacy committee is just one of our main thoughts on how to incorporate services and empowering them. So again, addressing the student-run services and seeing if that is one avenue that they want to approach will be a first step. If the student-run services have other ideas in which that they feel as though they can advocate for themselves, we will want to empower them to do that. So for an example, it's just with sexual violence and the Women's Center. So advocating for them in order to reach the best audience and get into the right meetings to get their voices heard. So it's all linking back into consultating, again, the student-run services and ensuring that that's what they would like. The advocacy committee is just one mere suggestion that we have to show them.
I think that if services and clubs knew that each other exists, both parties can be proactive in reaching out to the other party to know what they can do to share the event or share the knowledge, share everything. So I agree with Joe, but there's also a lot of things we can do, like women in STEM, women in science, women, FemFiz, all these existing clubs and affiliates exist, but perhaps they don't know each other well enough to reach out, or they just haven't had the time. It could be
10
either.
seconds.
That's it.
Okay, so this is a general question for the VP Education candidates. So I'll ask Andrew first, and then Heather will get to rebut, and then Heather will get to respond, and Andrew will get to rebut. So both of you on your platforms have a lot of points about provincial advocacy. The VP Education is also expected to advocate for students to the federal government. What are some of your priorities at that level of government?
So the federal level, there is an organization that has kind of lost support from various student groups over the last several years, and there are a bunch of independent schools with no formal federal affiliation that have begun to have conversations about banding together on campus-specific issues and advocating the federal government. I am interested in pursuing that. I think we need to build relationships with other schools, as we've done at the provincial level, at the federal level as well. One of the biggest issues, I think, is deferred maintenance costs. Keeping up buildings like this. We saw the PAC roof, I believe, in the pool cave in a couple of years ago. Like, buildings are getting to that point. That's the sort of advocacy that we need to make sure that roofs aren't falling on our heads. I would absolutely be in favor of teaming up with other schools in Ottawa.
Yeah, so I'm definitely interested in maintaining those relationships, as I think that lobbying as a group can often bring better results at the federal level. The reason that my platform focused a lot on provincial advocacy is largely because I think it will be one of the key areas of key priority areas with a provincial election coming up, but I won't neglect the federal side of things. I do think investments in STEM is something that definitely helps students and something that I think the federal government is really interested in
10
pursuing.
seconds.
So yeah, I'd like to work with that.
Okay, so Heather, you have a chance to respond now. So to the question, so I'll read the question again. So in addition, so both of you have a lot of points on your platform about provincial government. The VP Education is also expected to advocate for students to the federal government. What are some of your priorities at that level of government?
Sure. Well, I'll continue adding, I guess, to my response. Basically, I do think that maintaining relationships with MPs is something that we've done particularly well, and I'd like to continue that work. Yeah, I do think that working with other schools on this, with Indigenous funding, with more undergraduate research opportunities, particularly tax relief for students, anything that we can do at the federal level for that would be really, really cool to see. Maybe even to make up for some of the provincial losses due to those tax credits. At the federal level, that would be great. Yeah.
I think Heather's right on a number of those things, and I think she's right when she says it's about relationships. And that's really what I've been building for the past 3 years in this portfolio at the local, at the provincial, and even at the federal level. We have a cabinet minister in town as our MP who goes to Ottawa and brags about Waterloo. I think it is the job of feds to go and say to the federal government, put your money where your mouth is, right? Like, we're bragging to the world. In Davos, the Prime Minister is up talking about how great this institution is. We need to be lobbying a lot harder with our cabinet minister in
10
town
seconds.
to see some funds coming our way.
Thank you, candidates. We will now move into the last round of questions. And again, we'll start with the presidents. So Antonio, this question is for you. Antonio, you plan on developing a long-range plan for Orientation Week. Given that Orientation just recently did an extensive review of the program as a result of the fall reading week, or fall reading break, what will the development of this plan look like so it is not a duplication of recent efforts? You have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. Just speaking to other student leaders on other campus and getting a gauge of what their orientation looks like, it sounds very different from our orientation experience. And being a leader, having been a leader for 3 years in a row, both a frontline leader and a head team leader, I think I bring an interesting perspective in how we can improve orientation. And I want to make sure that the money students are putting towards and the university is putting towards orientation is being spent wisely. I want to make sure that the connection to this campus is stronger by any actions that we take. So it would be different because it would not look specifically only at fall reading break and how orientation changes because of that.
10 seconds. Okay. Caleb, you have 45 seconds to rebut.
I think we need to keep in mind Waterloo is different than other universities out there. We have university colleges out there that do their own orientation thing. We have societies such as Engineering Society that have, yes, their own orientation events. And part of the change of Reading Week and orientation alienated engineers and some of the university colleges in limiting parts of what they could do. So I think in approaching Orientation Week and adding on to what we've already seen is we need to make sure that our orientation is collaborative so we can further what the societies are doing and what the universities or colleges are doing. So we have our own Waterloo flavor of orientation.
Thank you, Caleb. We now have a question for you. So I think everyone in this room knows your opinions on WPIRG, but you've also talked about other predatory third-party groups on campus. So the question is, in your opinion, are there other third-party groups other than WPIRG that you believe are not providing service to UW undergraduates?
Okay, so two parts to this answer. One, fees we already have, and fees that are coming up. So one fee that we all pay a substantial amount for is the Imprint Fee. Imprint provides a great service, but they massively overprint. You can often see right there stacks and stacks of Imprint newspapers that are never opened and never read. So we need to re-examine how Heather's actually on the board of Imprint. We need to re-examine, okay, are we printing sufficient levels, and how can we further cost-effective online? Moving to the second part of future fees, Brian didn't mention this, but the example given in council was $27, and we need to look at what is that $27 per year for student proposed. Again, it's not. There will be student feedback.
10 seconds.
So we need to look at, is that cost effective for students? How many students are getting in legal trouble, and will that be cost effective over and represent all students? In my opinion, no.
Time. Antonio, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah. Caleb in his answer mentioned the Imprint fee, and Imprint is an independent organization outside of feds, so I think it's problematic in terms of a candidate or anybody running for feds to comment on how an independent organization should run, especially an organization like Imprint, whose essential role on campus is to keep both the administration and also feds, the student government, to account. So I'm not sure if it's something like let's evaluate every fee, and if it doesn't work to fulfill a certain agenda, then let's look to cut it. But I don't agree with that. So.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next questions for the candidates for VP Operations Finance. This is a general question. Josh, we'll begin with you if you don't mind. The question is, what specific plans do you have to improve Fed's commercial services?
All right, so I'm still learning more about Fed's commercial services. I don't understand yet how the student fee is linked to the losses commercial services have experienced. I've been told there's enough revenue being generated that those losses can roll over into the next year. Looking at commercial services, I understand Starbucks and Tim Hortons may be slightly more expensive, but given that they're paying all their operating costs as well as rent and they're still on campus, there's clearly enough purchasing power going on there to keep a third-party business in operation on campus. So I see a slight problem if our commercial services are
10 seconds.
At a deficit. At the same time, I think we can improve management by reducing costs and at the same time improving services.
Time.
Thank you, Josh. Brian, you have 45 seconds to respond to Josh's comments. Go ahead.
The difference between Starbucks, Tim Hortons, food services on campus, and Fed's commercial services is Fed's commercial services are a service and just that. They're there to keep costs lower. They're there to provide an alternative option for students on campus to have access to lower priced food. In addition, the deficits that we keep speaking to, they're primarily on paper deficits. They're not year over year deficits that happen. And the biggest impact that I see is there's a lack of vision in terms of where the commercial services need to go to get to whatever standards you're presenting.
Okay, and so then I'll ask you the question. What specific plans do you have to improve Fed's commercial services?
So it's been a big project from this past year of mine to improve part-time staff training, which will improve the service that students receive when they go and purchase items from Fed's commercial services. In addition, I think always being collaborative with students as well as being up to date with the market, because the trends are really the new and exciting things that students want to be able to purchase, such as the poke bowls that were introduced on campus this past year. That was students really want to buy these new things at an affordable cost, and continuing to do that with exploring the markets and exploring different options. I think that's the direction that I would like to take.
And then you have 45 seconds to respond to his comments. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have to gather my thoughts. While I agree that Fed's commercial services are supposed to be run as break-even, if for some reason we are, I still have yet to understand how we can keep running an on-paper deficit year over year and not have that loss be experienced somewhere. So pardon me for my ignorance in that regard. I believe to a large degree some of that may be solved with marketing. That's all I have to comment on that.
Thank you.
So the next questions for the VP internal candidates are,
I'm sorry. No, I believe the format was on track. We're good, right? Okay.
Okay, you scared me there. Don't do that. That's scary. Okay, so now for the VP internal candidates. So it's going to be a question to both of you. I'll repeat it after. Jill can start. Co-op Connection is partially funded through a partnership with CCA to ensure students are socially connected while on co-op. The pilot project with CCA has ended, and they are currently discussing how to move forward with the service. How would you ensure CCA continues to support this service and considers taking over it fully in the future?
Okay, so again, I think that it starts with meeting with CCA and making sure that our values align with them. So knowing that Federations of Students is here to really put students focus first. Well, CCA can say that. I think it's important that we are on the same page going forward and ensuring that we, at the end of the day, will value our students' opinions and value what our students' wants and needs are at Co-op Connection, because it is hard for them to feel affiliated with the campus or other satellite campuses when they're away on co-op. So ensuring that between the students, CECA, and Feds, that we're all aligning our thoughts and opinions and best representing the students, I think that the partnership could work out.
Wait.
You get 45 seconds to respond, and then you're going to have 60 seconds to answer the question, and I can repeat it if you want.
Oh, wait, can you repeat it?
Yeah. Okay. Co-op Connection is partially funded through a partnership with CCA to ensure students are socially connected while on co-op. The pilot project with CCA has ended, and they are currently discussing how to move forward with our service. How would you ensure CCA continues to support this service and considers taking it over fully in the future?
So the co-op, there's a committee, CEC, Co-op Experience Committee Council, something or another like that. So societies are involved, have a seat there. So I think this is something that societies can bring up. So I've been to a meeting, and I think only 3 faculty was represented. There wasn't a lot of student voices, but if societies knew that this committee exists and their ideas can be spoken at the committee, then things will get done and CCA will understand students' values. Go ahead.
You can answer the question yourself now with 60 seconds.
Okay. So again, this is a thing about visibility. So if societies knew that CEC can do something, they should be active and voice the opinions, or even just surveys for societies to get the reach of students and what they want to achieve. Yeah.
Well, I agree with Jaswell that it's important that the societies do have an input and a say in what happens with the co-op connection. I also think it's important that it's in our COPS agenda, so presidents meet termly, so once or twice, depending on the VPI at the time. So I think it's important that that is put into the agenda and the voices are heard from the presidents and that they go out into their constituents because they have the best rapport. Also, I think that it's important that with that, we utilize the VP education role and ensure that if they're going to be working with co-op in the fees, that this is also brought to attention, so ensuring that we're keeping in mind the student experience while they're on their co-op.
Okay, so the next question is for Heather. In your platform, you mentioned reducing staff at CECA in order to save students money. How do you plan to accomplish this goal with the university's strict HR rules?
Well, I think that first, like slowing the growth of hiring of new staff is the obvious place to start. I think we don't necessarily need to require them to cut staff, but ensure that their staff are actually producing the value that's worth 18% more over the last 5 years. If so, then yes. But I think looking at any contract employees where the rules are a little bit more flexible would be a way to work with that. I'm still sorting through the Freedom of Information request, which is done in a very complex manner, in a way to try to understand more about what other areas have been driving up the expenditures of CECA like mad. But I think it's clear that feds, given the right information, can provide advice on that matter.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yep. So this was for Heather. Heather, in your platform, you mentioned reducing staff at CCA in order to save students money. How do you plan to accomplish this goal with the university's strict HR rules?
Yeah, well, I think we need to put it out there that as much as we don't want to admit it, the co-op fee will not go down. Like, the university will not do that. The Board of Governors will not approve that. Co-op is our flagship program. That's why I'm proposing a full review. I'm not going to sit here and promise that we're going to cut this or cut that from CCA, because as Heather said, CCA can't even provide us with the breakdown of their funding. So why can't we sit here and say, this is where we're going to cut? I think we need to take a year in collaboration with CCA to do a deep review of the fee, and from there figure out what can be cut, what can be reallocated, and then long-term do that with an advisory committee of students. That committee that was brought up, the CEC committee, needs to be changed completely and have better student representation.
Great. Okay, so the last question is for Andrew. So Andrew, in your platform, you talk about a lot of different goals. Arguably, it would be difficult to accomplish all of these in 1 year. How will you prioritize, knowing it is unlikely that you will complete them all?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think having an ambitious platform was very much intentional, because this role is 1 year, and advocacy is way more than 1 year. Fighting for something like the UPass is something that takes years and years to do. You can't set an agenda in 1 year. So part of what you need to do when you're advocating is go in with a slate of different options, and then when you get there, see what's on the table and see what partners and other people in the sector are willing to talk about, what is a hot topic, and jump on that. So I have a number of items that I really am passionate about addressing, and co-op is one that it's on the table, and that's why it's on my platform and I want to pursue. But if there's another one that isn't on the table and people don't want to talk about, I'm not going to smack my head against the wall, waste my time and your money on something that's not going to happen in the next year.
Okay, yeah, I basically agree with what Andrew said right there. And with my platform, I really did want to take my experience working at Queen's Park and see, okay, what are the hot topics right now and how can we make those issues work for students? I know everyone's talking a lot about electricity right now. It's the issue that nobody can be quiet about, and I want to say, okay, given that people are going to be talking about this anyways, how can we translate this into a way for students? That's why I propose extending the Ontario Electricity Support Program to students. But yeah, again, I agree with Andrew. If it's not an issue that anyone's willing to listen to, there's tons of things that we can advocate for students, and I don't think I need to limit myself to just what's in that platform, because
Thank you very much, candidates, for your thoughtful answers to our sometimes very tough questions. We appreciate it. We will now close the debate with closing statements. And since we started with Antonio on that side, we will start the closing statements with Andrew and work our way across the tables. So you have 2 minutes each. Andrew, you may begin starting now, as soon as your mic works.
All right. So thank you again all for coming and hearing us out. Thank you for taking interest in the election and in our platforms. I started by saying I'm excited to be running with Team Gold and my teammates here. And I think that's because what sets us apart is our experience. From year one, from the first time we stepped on this campus, we've each been working in different areas of campus, but all to improving our fellow students' experience. And my background has largely been on the back end. It's been with the UPass, it's been housing rights, it's been academic rights, it's been lobbying for OSAP, and I hope to really continue doing that as your Vice President Education. I hope it's been clear as I've been talking that I feel like I have the background for this job. I've been doing this stuff here and there for quite a while, and I would be excited to do this long term. I've built relationships up at the government level and on campus that I think are really very beneficial. As both Heather and I have talked about, relationships are absolutely crucial for advocacy. We can't go in and just say, hey, this is what we want to see changed. No one's going to listen, right? We need to build relationships, continue coming to the table, continue doing research, and always coming back to students, consulting, what is it that you want, what's your experience like, and what can I bring to decision makers to improve your experience. That's my outlook on the position, so I hope you'll consider voting for Team Gold next week.
All right, so I think Andrew and I see eye to eye on a lot of things on the advocacy portfolio. Obviously, there are some things that set us apart. For me, I think my biggest asset that I can bring to Feds would be my experience working for an MPP. Seeing the other side of Queen's Park, I think, is incredibly useful. I know for me, I didn't really understand what went on until I saw that perspective. And I think that's an incredibly useful perspective, seeing what pragmatic advocacy looks like. And I'm really excited to have the potential of bringing that to Feds. So I hope that you consider voting for me for VP Ed, and I'd be happy to take any questions after the debate. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I still have somewhat of a fear because I'm running independently, so I feel a little afraid. But I just want to point out that my views from the society's point of view, so there's some knowledge that I'm missing that I would have to learn more about, because I don't know much about clubs in some sense, and I don't know much about special events in other sense. So and services. So that would require working with the clubs manager, working with the service managers and special events coordinators to actually be more knowledgeable at the job. What I can bring is the relationships I have with the current students and what I know from a society's point of view, and also St. Jerome's point of view. But other than that, I would need to learn more, but vote Jasbel.
Awesome. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and their energy and their questions today. It's been a delight to sit up here and be able to think critically about our platform points and hear others' opinions. Just to reiterate, I have been in a vast amount of leadership opportunities here on campus, and I'm willing and open to share and learn from others, and I'm looking forward to doing so if elected in. I think it's important that coming in with the leadership experience and the knowledge, but also willing to grow and learn from others is super important in this role, and I'm definitely willing to do that. I also think it's important to recognize all the volunteers and the staff that are working hard and tirelessly at Feds currently and in the future, and noting that their hard work is recognized and super important in the campus life. So I'm looking forward to working with Team Gold in hopes that we do get elected in this year.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I also have the closing remarks now for Andrew Zettel, Team Reboot. I'll be reading them on his behalf. This is for Andrew Zettel. I want to again thank the host of this debate. I hope a productive exchange of ideas has taken place and that students are thinking very seriously about whom they might support next week. It has been a tricky task running in this election all the way from Ottawa. I recognize that my written statement being read to you doesn't have nearly the same effect as my presence with you would. Today I'm not able to shake your hands, listen to your concerns, or engage with my opponents. However, I want to reiterate that I care very much about our school, and I wouldn't be running this election if I didn't think I could contribute positively to the university community. I have to thank the Reboot Waterloo team for doing a lot of the heavy lifting during this campaign. Caleb, Heather, and Josh, I'm very proud to be running with you, and it would be an honor to serve with you on the Fed's executive. Presenting oneself and one's ideas in an election can be a very intimidating task, and you guys have exceeded many expectations. You've advocated for a common sense style of leadership, one that's compassionate, innovative, and decisive. I am proud to be part of the Reboot Waterloo team. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but Commander Hadfield once said, if you start thinking that only your biggest and shiniest moments count, you're setting yourself up to feel like a failure most of the time. In my opening remarks, I highlighted to you that students have you, the students, have before you excellent candidates, including great candidates for VP Internal. I sincerely hope you'll vote for me in this role. I will work very hard to represent you, to bring people together, and to celebrate our great university. Moreover, I'll work with anyone and everyone. Thank you.
I'm good? Okay. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening and trying to learn more about the candidates' positions, and please remember to vote on the 13th to the 15th for the candidates that you believe represent your interests. I'm thinking of a quote from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I can't remember the exact line, but something to the effect of, anybody who desires to rule should automatically be disqualified from the position. And I think, well, what I am in this for is I see a problem with the way we are spending money, and I think I speak for myself, and I believe the majority student body when I say that Feds needs to be transparent and fiscally responsible, and I will work tirelessly toward that goal.
Thank you, everybody. Like 7 times thank you for being here in person, also online, and thank you for the moderators. I just want to echo that I want to continue to work for the students, continue my intense passion that I have for improving the student experience on campus, and bringing a critical view to the commercial service as well as the VP Operations and Finance role to continue working for you. I think it's very important that we remain critical while optimistic at the same time, and I believe Team Gold does that, and I'm hopeful that we communicate that to you today. Don't forget, Monday to Wednesday next week, vote Team Gold or vote for anyone. Just get out there and vote at vote.feds.ca and have your voices heard.
I want to say, as everyone has, thank you very much for coming here, spending your time, getting to know everybody else's platform and our platform. And for a moment, I want to return to why I came to Waterloo, and I believe a lot of you came to Waterloo. I came to Waterloo because it was practical, it was efficient, it had startups, it was a campus that did. It got out there and did. And as I became more involved in Feds over the last year, a lot of the student feedback was Feds didn't. And the feedback from students was screw Feds, what does Feds even do for me? And that, I think a lot of that is translated out into voter turnout. We see last year we had 9% voter turnout, and that was high. The year before that it was 5%. And we see at Western 25%. We see at other universities 40, 50% turnout. And I want to change that. I want to make, as if we got in, we were able to reboot Feds. I really want to make sure that we're working for students, that students are engaged, students know what is being done and that Feds does. And I think part of starting that is that you get out on the 13th to 15th and vote, that we don't have the pitiful 9% and that we do get engaged and we no longer have that apathy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just want to echo some of the things I said in my opening statement. I think we have a fantastic team. I think Team Gold, as I mentioned, is the most qualified team in this campaign. I think Brian, Jill, myself, and Andrew bring unique set of experiences that together really make us the ideal team. And it just like shows on the day-to-day basis of this campaign how organically and in sync we are with one another. And I think over the course of the campaign, we have really communicated a clear vision of what Feds as an organization should be. And we believe in the positive impact Feds can have in not only advocating for you, but enhancing that campus experience. And I think our team also recognizes there are areas of improvement and that we can be more efficient with your money and that we can be physically responsible, but that doesn't, we take a more constructive approach and a compassionate approach, and I think the choice is clear. So as Brian said, make sure to go vote next week and vote Team Gold.
Thank you very much, candidates. So we do have a little bit of time left in our forum, so what we'll do is open it up to members of the audience, get a mic and start passing it around. Before I do so, though, what I could do is close this portion of it by simply asking you to, how about a round of applause for the candidates, if you don't mind. Thank you. Good job, everyone. So does anyone have a question at all for the candidates while they're here? I have a microphone. Please keep it respectful. Anyone at all? Any questions? All right, I guess you're free to go.